Yeah, thank you, Brent. Appreciate that opening. And let me just tell you a little bit about, I think the poll questions popped up there, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about Fort Collins, just so you have a little background information here. Fort Collins is about 60 miles north of Denver, population 174,000 people. And Fort Collins is one of 3 agencies across the United States that has won the Malcolm Baldrige Award. The Malcolm Baldrige Award really is about the improved quality of services that you provide to your communities or businesses. So we're real proud of that. So some of the activities and programs that we have. Next, Scott. Yeah. And Brent mentioned a bunch of those. And one of the things I do want to point out that Brent talked about is we have been partners with Compasscom since the late 90s. We were one of a couple agencies that actually had AVL in the state of Colorado back in the 90s. And we've been partnering with Compasscom to continually look for ways to improve this over the years. So it's been a good partnership for us, and we've definitely benefited from that. So everything you see in these activities that we're showing here, really, all these activities, we have AVL equipped on all of our equipment. And the purpose of that really is so that we can kind of track where everything's at, what's going on. And we're going to dive into that a little bit more. We're going to get into every program because we don't have the time, but we're definitely going to share some examples with you and kind of talk about some of the programs that we have in streets. Next, Scott. Fort Collins has about 574 miles of center main lane miles of roadway that we maintain. And then if you look at all the lane miles, we have 1,986 lane miles. Next, Scott. I'm going to jump into sweeping here. We'll start with it. Sweeping is obviously a big thing for any community when you talk about cleanliness. All of our sweepers are equipped with AVL. And you can see over on the left-hand side there, basically our sweeping schedule that we have as we sweep major arterials of downtown, collectors, and residential streets. One of the things that we really embarked on was the fact that when we started looking at AVL was we didn't have a good feel of what we were accomplishing for sweeping in terms of how much we could get done in a day. How efficient were we? So by putting AVL on this, we're able to capture all that data, so we know exactly what we're sweeping. We also have added some other features that we put on our sweepers, where we're actually capturing now how many tons of material that we pick up. We capture that on a daily basis per sweeper. We also capture video footage now that we have, so that we can identify how much curb line we actually sweep. These all benefit us because it's really important for us to see how much material that we can actually keep out of the waterways. And it also helps our stormwater personnel in terms of how much debris they have to clean out of the storm inlets. Next, Scott. What you see here is really kind of all of our zones that we have. We've got 20 zones that we have in the city, 10 on the west side of the city and 10 on the east side of the city. One of the things that we try to do is on our website is we really post when we're going to be in their area sweeping, so that people can move their vehicles out of the way so that we can get to the curb. That's been very helpful. And we've been able to capture this data with AVL so that we can determine really how efficient we can be and how long it will take us to sweep a zone. So by using that data, it really kind of helps us communicate better with the city. So Scott's going to share with you just a couple examples of some of the data we capture with AVL.
All right, thanks, Larry. So on our sweeper, we have a broom up and broom down sensor. And what you're seeing here on this map is red is broom down, and the purple color, the breadcrumbs, is broom up. So we can kind of track, what roads we've done and swept, and keep to those schedules for the zones. And again, the crew chiefs can play this back. This is with the Compass Track software that you're looking at. And, they can select one or multiple sweepers. We have 5 sweepers that have AVL on them that we use. And we typically will run reports about, how much was the broom down or the broom up during a certain day. And again, this is just an example with one of the sweepers on one of the days. And kind of what's circled is, how many miles was the broom down? In this case, like 15, broom up 25, or maybe you're looking at the duration of the hours for the broom downtime or broom up. So that kind of gives the crew chief an idea of how well are we doing out there during the daily operations. Now, in this case, Larry and I looked at it and we're like, wow, that seems like a lot of miles that the broom was up. So we kind of questioned the crew chief, and he's like, well, let's take a look at the playback mode for the Compass Track. So what we did is we, picked the date, the date and the sweeper for that day. And as you can see here, the blue dots all indicate, the driving with the broom up, and then the red is where the broom was down actually sweeping. And that kind of gave us, a good look at, that explains why, the broom was up quite a bit of miles versus the sweeping miles.
I just add to that, Scott.
Go ahead.
Just the emergency calls too that we get, being able to track on AVL how efficient we are. We get a lot of call outs from the police department. It could be accidents. We have to go sweep up glass. It could be debris that's dropped in the roadway. And this way, it's really a tool that we can say, here's how efficient we are in a day with our sweeper operators. The other thing is this data can be used to help us support our budget needs when we go to council to ask for additional either sweepers or personnel.
Yeah, good points. And then also we'll track the miles. So this is one of our key performance indicators for sweeping. So each month we do a report that shows the total miles of broom down. So I know, in the past, years ago, because like Larry said, we've been using AVL and we've been using, Compass Track, Compasscom quite a number of years. In the past, the drivers would just write down, hey, I drove this many miles today, X number of miles, but we didn't know if the broom was up or down. So what we do now is, daily, we know how many miles the broom was down doing, performing sweeping out there. So we can plot, month to month, how many miles are broom down swept. And this is 2021. And if you add up all these bars, it'd be about 14,500 lane miles of sweeping. Also, one of the things that we do is we have iPads, and this here is using the GeoEvent from ESRI, and Compasscom's software talks to that, has a connector. So our GIS department puts together these maps. So they grab this live data coming in, and then they, they'll take it, and then we can put it out to a map that can be pulled up, outside of our, city network. So this example, the sweeper operator will take an iPad out with them in their sweeper, and they can pull up and see what they swept like the day before. They can go up to like 10 days in the past. And where that becomes important is over maybe a weekend. They're not positive on a Monday morning, like, where did I leave off sweeping in that neighborhood? So this here is an example where the operator can take a look and see what they've done. And all these little breadcrumbs here on the map is what they've done for a certain day. and then they can, continue on and hit those streets in that neighborhood that they didn't do. And where this has become important to do is that folks will call in and say, hey, you didn't sweep my street today. So because we have these all in zones, the neighbors know, the neighborhood folks know, like, yeah, you're going to be sweeping in my neighborhood on these dates. And we also, like Larry said, on our city website, you can go and like put in an email address and you'll get alerted like that we're going to be sweeping in your zone. And so we've gotten calls like, hey, you missed my street. So this is another way to help, with some automation stuff and using the GeoEvent Connector tied into the city GIS department of how we can, just be more efficient, make sure, taking care of the customers. We also, in order to be more efficient when we sweep, we have roll-offs that we use. And this one roll-off kind of that I circled, that's the GPS unit. That thing reports back once a day, every day, just the location of that roll-off. And we'll take these roll-offs and we'll put them out in the neighborhoods, or maybe like a parking lot of a park in the neighborhood. And we'll leave it there so that the sweepers can be more efficient. They don't have to drive all the way back into the yard to dump their load. They can sweep and then go to the roll-off and dump. And also you don't need to have like a truck driver like on standby all day long while they're sweeping, where a truck driver would have to pull up, to the sweeper and dump. So we've tried to, minimize the amount of time that a truck is just driving around. What we'll do is we'll get these roll-offs when they get filled up to a certain level, then the truck driver will go out and pick it up and take it to the dump. And this here is just a quick example of, again, using the compass track where, these circles with arrows, that's the location of the roll-off that's out there. And again, the sweeper operators can see this data, the crew chief operators can see it. And kind of a funny story is in the past when a lot of times we'll have seasonal drivers drop off these roll-offs. And if there's a changeover in employees or whatever, all of a sudden there may have been like a lost roll-off. So that's kind of another reason why it kind of prompted, putting the GPS devices on the roll-offs so that now we know exactly where they are. But we had a resident call in, and it had been like 6 months, and the resident called in and said, hey, are you ever going to pick up this roll-off? So of course, nobody knew that it was even out there because of, personnel changeover. So we, of course we said, yeah, we'll come out and get it. But that kind of, got us thinking, hey, let's get GPS on these roll-offs. Oops, wrong way. I'll turn it back to Larry.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Obviously, always one of my favorite subjects is snow and ice removal. Fort Collins receives about 48 inches of snow a year. We have about 1,100 lane miles of roads that we plow. And one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is the fact that we do look at all modes of transportation when it comes to snow and ice removal. And you can see there, we're talking about sidewalks. So we have probably about 150 miles of sidewalks that we actually plow and open. Anything that we plow onto the sidewalks that are attached to the curb, we actually go back and we plow those sidewalks open. Ice cutting is a big thing for us. This year it was really bad because of the storms that started coming in. First one in December 30th around 21 came in, and of course then we had some warm temperatures, freeze thaw, and it starts freezing up. So then we get into ice cutting mode. So what you see down there in the bottom right hand is last year when we had about 18 inches of snow that we got, and you can see the motor graders that physically got stuck. Now, one thing I wanted to will point out is that a lot of times when we hire contractors, we'll actually give them mobile AVL devices to put in their machines So if we're using contractors, so we can track them. We've done that for sidewalks. We've done that for graders, loaders. When we get into certain situations where we have to bring in additional contractors to help us. Next slide, Scott. So we have these 4 priorities in the city of Fort Collins. These priorities are basically, we're going to focus on the priority 1, which is our arterials, also our emergency snow routes. And then our 2s are collectors that basically collect all of the collectors into the residential streets. And then our bus routes, which are for basically all the school buses. And then our priority 4 streets, we really don't plow unless snow depth warrants it. That's because in Colorado, we get so many sunshine days that a lot of times when we get heavy snows, it'll melt within a week. So we don't necessarily go in and plow unless it gets over 12, 14 inches of snow. Then we'll take a look at that. Or traffic movement is bad, or maybe there's some heavy drifting. So these are our routes. We have 10 routes. You can't see all of them there, but 10 plow routes within the city of Fort Collins. You can see the red ones are arterial routes that we have. Now, one of the first things that we did equip with AVL was our snowplow trucks. And as we talked, that was done in the 90s. I felt that was going to be really important because I wasn't getting the data back that I needed to make good decisions, and really didn't know where the trucks were all the time. So one of the things that we did once we equipped all of our snowplow trucks with the AVL units was we actually started to look at how long it took them to plow their routes. So once we determined, after compiling about a couple of years of data, I would say we went back and looked at it. Then we came up with the performance metrics of saying, okay, if it takes us 4 hours to make a round in the arterials, then basically our performance goal is going to be 4 hours to plow the arterials down to bare pavement. So that's what we use for performance metric there. And actually, what our average metric right now for plowing an arterial to get it down to bare pavement is about 3.8 hours. And then when we look at the collectors, we took the same thing as we analyzed the AVL data. We said, all right, how long does it take us to get the collectors plowed? Now, let me clarify that. The arterials are 4 hours after the snow stops, when the snow stops snowing. So then once that's done, that's when the time and the clock starts ticking for us to get it down to bare pavement. Then once we're done with the arterials, then it's 2 hours on the collectors to get those plowed down to bare pavement. So that's how we kind of measure the performance in Fort Collins to see how we're doing. Next slides.
All right. So this is an example, again, using Compass Track, where did a screenshot of where the plows were out. And I'm only doing like a breadcrumb trail that lasts for 5 minutes behind the vehicles. But you can tell, so in this example, the red is where, they're mainly just spreading. And then the green breadcrumb truck, well, hold on, the other way around. Red is when the plow's down, and then green is when they're just spreading. And then blue is when they're kind of, idle. The truck's on, but it's idle. And then if it was a black, it would be the ignition's off. But again, just something like this is what the crew chiefs would be looking at in the command center during a snow operations event, during the storm. And again, it gives them a great, snapshot of where our vehicles and, what are they doing out there. We also, again, use the GeoEvent Connector that Compasscom provides. And this here is an example of a public facing website. So citizens can go to the city website and they can pull up snowplow tracking. And the black dots on here represent where the plow is. And then the magenta colored dots are the last 30 minutes that it's plowed. And what we do on this is we do about a somewhere between 5 and 10 minute delay. So it's not real time to the public, but the previous map I showed you, that is real time coming in, and the crew chiefs are looking at it. And also, and not displayed on this map, is there, if you would zoom in closer to this map, you'd start to see blue dots on it, breadcrumbing, and that shows like the last 3 hours. So kind of what this helps solve is people would call in and say and tell us, hey, you never plowed my road. But typically, we'd go back and look at the data, and we'd see that we did plow it. It may have just have been 3 hours. Like Larry said, a lot of times it takes us 4 hours to make a whole loop of the priority ones. And so we may have, maybe we did it at 2:30 in the morning. They get up at 6 and they're like, hey, you didn't plow my street. So that's really cut down most of those calls to pretty much zero nowadays, where people will call in because they can go, online and just pull up, where we've been plowing. So that's been a good feature to have. We also use the GeoEvent Connector, again, coupled with their GIS department, to do like a real-time map for the crew chiefs. And they can pull this up on their, their iPhone or their iPad, and, whether they're in-house or out in the field. So this is where the crew chiefs are like, hey, Scott, when I'm out driving around, I just want like a quick way to see, to look at my phone or iPad, not while they're driving, but, when they're in the field, pull it up. So again, they can just do all that wirelessly, and it gives them a real quick snapshot of what trucks are where during the storm. And then kind of like, Randy explained about how they have their Compass AV, Compass track, tied into their spreader controllers. So we do the same thing here. All of our spreader controllers are certified power. And we do have that connection where we get the data, of the material rates and also material totals. We also get plow up, plow down. And we make use of this data, like Larry mentioned, try to figure out how well we're doing when we're fighting the storm, and to know how much material is getting applied on, pretty much every street segment we know. And all I did is right here, and we have a dashboard as well, like Randy had, that kind of shows total miles, material. I didn't do a screenshot of one because I didn't take one during the middle of the storm. So I didn't have really anything good to show at this point, but I'll have to, note to self to do a screenshot the next snowstorm. But this here is a quick report. We might want to know how much did one of the trucks spread during their shift. So all I did is I just picked February 23rd and did like one of our shifts, midnight to noon. And in this example, that truck put out 6,445 gallons of de-icer. This here is just a more encompassing, shows like all of the plows, like what all did the plows do material-wise during that same time frame and date. And in this case, we can, where I've circled it, you can see the total amount of pounds of salt that was applied, a little over 61,000, and a little over 29,000 gallons of de-icer. So again, just a good way to kind of see how well we're doing and how much material is getting applied.
And I just wanted to add something real quick, Scott, to that somebody had asked a question about calibration. Obviously, we calibrate our equipment. Our shop does that for us to calibrate the granular and the liquid. But we also have another way to check what the trucks are using. when we load our granular products into our trucks, all of our loaders have scales on them, and the scale then measures how much product goes into the truck. So each truck number is entered into the scale that's on the loader, and then that's sent wirelessly back to our server back here so that we can also see how much product each truck's taking out. Then we can compare that to what they're putting down. The same thing kind of with the liquids, because our facility's set up where the drivers can pull up and they kind of punch in whatever product they want. It's like going to a gas station, and then it measures how much liquid each truck takes out every time they come into the yard.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Larry, because we do count, kind of reconcile those numbers at the end of each storm and see, is everything making sense? And just to make sure that things are calibrated with the spreaders. And I know on the granular, there is like a gate height that manually has to be entered by the driver. And if that's set incorrectly, you'll end up using more material or less. So yeah, it's good. It's good to have a double check. And like Larry said, that wirelessly is sent back here, and we can just pull it up and double check for each of the trucks. So what I wanted to do here is I wanted to do just a quick example of an incident. So typically after each storm, we always get some calls in of saying, hey, you might have been speeding. You may have, knocked over my fence, a mailbox. You sideswiped my car and hit a mirror, those kinds of things. And so what we do is we'll use AVL. And a lot of times in the past, we've, when a crew chief is talking to the citizen about the issue, as soon as the crew chief is like, well, we do track all of our vehicles, then a lot of times the people just drop it. They're like, oh, well, maybe it was the state, maybe it was the county. But in those times when, people are just kind of thinking they'll, maybe try to get away with something. But usually the minute you say, yeah, we track all of our snowplows, then a lot of times things get dropped. But this here is an example of a hit mailbox. Someone called in, they're like, hey, when I left my house this morning at 7 a.m., my mailbox was there and standing. When I came home, 6 at night, 5 at night, it was, laid over, it was knocked down. And, hey, you guys did it. So that, that was kind of the thing that comes in, the call that comes in. And usually it's like a day later or so, or the next day or 2 days. It just depends on the incident. But a lot of times we always kind of have to look back. So it's always good to, that we keep all this data and we can do playbacks with the Compass track. So in this example, the highlighted area box, I'm doing like a spotlight search right here. So that way I could, I don't have to try to like guess which of the 30 trucks that we have, which ones were out here driving on a, between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on a certain day. Because with all that data, it's going to take a lot of time to try to do that. So with a spotlight search, you can highlight it and just say, give me what was in here in this little area. Show me what vehicles traveled in here. So real convenient. We love it. So the blue circle is kind of where the mailbox would have been. I'm just kind of laying out an example. So here's what that search brought back. It showed me some breadcrumbing and a couple trucks there. And then what I can do is I can click on any of these breadcrumbs, and it kind of lets me know what, truck, that's 22018, tells me the time, the speed of it. A lot of times with incidents, when things get knocked over, our risk management folks, they want to know like, well, how fast was the truck going? Was it going super fast and maybe through a huge, windrow of snow off the plow? Or was it going a typical normal speed, which is around 20 miles an hour? In this case, it was going 21 miles an hour. But I could find like who drives it, because with our spreader controllers that are tied into the AVL, we get the driver. So we know who's driving that shift. So date, time, speed, driver. And then in this case, this is the road. I kind of circled it. And that turns out that road that I've circled, that's actually a county maintained road. So our drivers shouldn't have been on that road. But, typically had we not, let's say we didn't even have AVL or we didn't have any idea about this, had the customer called in to the front desk would have been, oh, well, you live on a road that we don't plow. So it wouldn't, it's not us. I mean, that's what could have very easily happened. But in this case, we found out that, yeah, we were on that road and yeah, we were plowing because red means the plow's down. And, so in that case, I mean, that's just, sometimes you kind of do, you hit some stuff or you have things like this that happen. And, but what the crew chief can do is he can go back now and talk to the two drivers that run this route and driving that road and just let them know, so you can kind of use it as a training opportunity and say, yeah, make sure you don't plow, this road and then the next go around. So just wanted to kind of do a quick example about that. Now I'll turn it back over to Larry.
Okay, this is one of the areas that obviously we talk about the environment being sustainable, where we actually have some collection sites in the streams around Fort Collins. And what you're seeing here is we partnered with Colorado State University to do chloride loads in the stream. So what we do with the AVL data is we put it all together in these watersheds, and we can actually break it out right depending on what street we're looking at. If it's next to a stream, we can determine if we have an issue with say too much of a chloride load in the stream and what we might do to the aquatics there. So it's really something we kind of jumped into because it was a direction that I thought was real important when we start looking at the environment. Let's look at the next slide, Scott. So what you see here is the watersheds, and you can see obviously the trucks that have been in those sheds there where they've driven around. So we've captured all of the product that they put down. We measure that, we look at it, and we have like about 24 hours if we exceed the aquatic or the chloride load limit in the stream, that it needs to come back down to normal. So with this data now, we can actually measure that. And it's been very helpful for us to go back and to analyze what operators there. Some operators, they want to just kind of crank up the old salt or the liquids because they think more is better. So this way we can go back and have conversations with them about how much product they're using. So this has been very useful for us. We actually put out a report you can actually get online and probably type in, Fort Collins, Colorado Stormwater Center study, and you could see a full report there with all the data. But based on AVL, that helps us capture all the quantities that we need of materials that we put down in these watersheds. So that way, then really we get to summarize what the effects are of the de-icing materials and what it does to the water quality of these streams. So real important, and I think has been very useful, and our council has really appreciated the reports that have been able to come back to them with. Next, Scott.
So let me just wrap it up saying, like in the top left corner, some of our trucks have, an air temp sensor, but also friction. And it's kind of like one of the newest offerings of the RWIS, or the Roadway Weather Information System. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to tie it into our spreader controller there in the center of the screen. And then that data will be pulling off into the Compasscom AVL. So again, that'll just be another way to see how well we're doing with plowing and throwing down material in terms of the friction rate of the roadway. So that's kind of where we're headed, and that's the direction we're trying to take, where, once we get the spreader controller talking to the friction with the the weather mobile sensor, then we should be able to maybe start automating, the amount of material that's spread onto the roadway. So that's kind of where we want to take it, kind of the next step that we see happening.
Okay,